The following disclaimer is for those in California only. Pursuant to California Assembly Bill 2571, it is illegal for the advertisement and or marketing of any firearm-related products and or programs in a manner that is designed, intended, or reasonably appears to be attractive to minors. As such, if you are currently in California, this program is restricted to only those that are over 18. Please turn this program off now if you are in California and under 18. Now, on to the program. Hello and welcome to the centertenspodcast. Centertens is a podcast that discusses small bore and precision air rifle from junior shooting sports on up to NCAA collegiate and Olympic competition. And now here's your host, Adam Pearson. Hello, Centertens listeners, and happy Thanksgiving. We're going to make this real short today so you can enjoy your Thanksgiving with your friends and family. We only have a few matches to review from this past weekend, so we're going to go ahead and get started. First match was on Friday, November 17th at Jacksonville State. It was UT Martin against Jacksonville. Jacksonville topped that match with a 46-70 to UT Martin's 46-59. Jacksonville had a small bore score of 23-04 and an air rifle score of 23-66 to UT Martin's 23-21 small bore, 23-38 air. For the scoring teams, top shooter for Jacksonville State was Lars Lillinge with an 11-74 aggregate. Their small bore team, Lars Lillinge, had a 5.78. We had a pair of 5.77s from Franz Rasmussen and Kim Jettenberg, and Sam Burrow came in with a 5.72. In air, Lars Lillinge had a 5.96, Sam Burrow a 5.94, Franz Rasmussen a 5.93, and Kim Jettenberg with a 5.83. For UT Martin, their top shooter was Atlanta Walther with an 11.76 aggregate. In small bore, Atlanta had a 5.86. Nicholas Fairs with a 5.82, Joseph Kovac with a 5.81, and Aubrey Summers a 5.72. Their air rifle team, Atlanta Walther had a 5.90, Aubrey Summers a 5.89, Nicholas Fairs a 5.81, and Joseph Kovac a 5.78. Then we'll move on to the second match, which was on Saturday. We saw Murray State, Jacksonville State, UT Martin, and Alabama Birmingham all competing. Murray State topped that match with a 47-17 aggregate, followed by Jacksonville State with a 46-83, UT Martin a 46-24, and Alabama Birmingham a 45-78. Murray State topped that with a small bore score of 23-39 and a 23-78 air. Jacksonville State had a 23-26 small bore, 23-57 air, followed by UT Martin's 22-86 small bore and a 23-38 air. And Alabama Birmingham had a 22-60 small bore and a 23-18 air. Scoring teams, Murray State's top shooters had a tie at 11.83 with Allison Henry and Scott Patterson. For small bore, Allison Henry had a 5.89, Scott Patterson a 5.87, John Blanton a 5.82, and Alok Horder with a 5.81. For air, Scott Patterson had a 5.96, as well as Matthias Kuru with a 5.96. Allison Henry a 5.94, and Alok Horder with a 5.92. Moving on to Jacksonville State, their top shooter was Franz Rasmussen with an 11.78 aggregate. Their small bore team, Sam Burrow with a 5.85. Then Franz Rasmussen and Lars Lillinge both had 5.83s. Kim Jettenberg had a 5.75. And for the air rifle, Franz Rasmussen a 5.95, Sam Burrow a 5.91, Lars Lillinge a 5.89, and Kim Jettenberg a 5.82. For UT Martin, their top shooter, Atlanta Walther with a 11.75 aggregate. In small bore, Atlanta had a 5.82, Joseph Kovac a 5.77, Nicholas Fairs a 5.72, and Aubrey Summers a 5.55. Their air rifle team was Atlanta Walther with a 5.93, then Nicholas Fairs a 5.92, Joseph Kovac a 5.81, and Aubrey Summers a 5.72. And then for Alabama Birmingham, their top shooter was Christopher Comstock with an 11.49. In their small bore team, Amy Cohan had a 5.75, Christopher Comstock a 5.66, Gracie Turk a 5.62, and Emily Buck had a 5.57. And then for the air rifle, Gracie Turka had a 585, Christopher Comstock at 583. Then we had a pair of 575s from both Brett Ling and Megan McLaughlin. So the next match of the day, we saw Kentucky and Akron. They were up at University of Alaska Fairbanks. Kentucky had a top that match with a 47-21 to Akron's 47-12. Kentucky had a 23-37 in small bore and a 23-84 air, followed by Akron with a 23-38 in small bore with a 23-74 air. Their top shooter was Sophia Cicerello with an 11.86 aggregate. In small bore, Sophia Cicerello had a 5.87, as well as Martin Voss. Then Emmy Sellers had a 5.84, and Jaden Thompson with a 5.79. And then in air, Sophia Cicerello had a 5.99, Braden Pizer a 5.97, Emmy Sellers a 5.96, and Allison Buessler a 5.92. For Akron, their top shooter was Gavin Perkowski with an 11.82 aggregate. In small bore, Aaron Schnupp had a 5.88, Natalia Seek a 5.86, Gavin Perkowski a 5.85, and Lex Kirk a 5.79. Their air rifle team, Gavin Perkowski had a 5.97, Andrew DeRoss a 5.96, Natalia Seek a 5.91, and Lex Kirk a 5.90. Match 4 for the weekend, we saw Ohio State traveling to the University of Texas in El Paso. Ohio State topped that match with an aggregate score of 47-02 to UTEP's 45-91. Ohio State had a small bore score of 23-34 and an air rifle score of 23-68. UTEP had a small bore of 22-70 and a 23-21 air. Top shooters for Ohio State, there was a tie between Victor Kiss and Paige Hollowell with an 11.80 aggregate. In small bore, Paige Hollowell had a 5.86, Victor Kiss a 5.84, Lillian Warren a 5.83, and Derek Kaiser a 5.81. And then in air, Victor Kiss had a 5.96, Paige Hollowell a 5.94, Derek Kaiser a 5.93, and John Hamilton a 5.85. For UTEP, their top shooter was Roxanne Keel with an 11.61 aggregate. For small bore, Roxanne had a 5.73, Isabella Rios a 5.72, Paige Hildebrandt with a 5.68, and Isabel Brooks with a 5.57. Their air rifle team, Roxanne Keel had a 5.88. We had a pair of 5.79s for both Paige Hildebrandt and Isabella Rios, and Isabel Brooks had a 5.75. Match 5 was on Sunday, and it was the second match between Ohio State and UTEP. Ohio State topped that match again with an aggregate score of 47-12 to UTEP's 45-84. Ohio State small bore had a 23-37 and a 23-75 air to UTEP's 22-69 small bore and 23-15 air. Top shooter of that day was Derek Kaiser with an 11.85 aggregate. For small bore, Derek had a 5.90, Victor Kiss a 5.84, Lillian Warren a 5.82, and Paige Hollowell with a 5.81. And for air, Paige Hollowell had a 5.96. We had a pair of 5.95s from Derek Kaiser and Victor Kiss, and a 5.89 from Lillian Warren. For UTEP, top shooter was Isabella Rios with an 11.54 aggregate. For small bore, Isabel Brooks had a 5.76, Isabella Rios a 5.68, Paige Hildebrandt a 5.65, and Roxanne Keel a 5.60. In air, Isabella Rios had a 5.86, Roxanne Keel had a 5.81, Paige Hildebrandt a 5.77, and Isabel Brooks a 5.71. The final match of the weekend, we saw Alaska Fairbanks, Akron, and Kentucky all competing at the Tanana Valley Sportsman Association. Alaska Fairbanks topped that match with a 41-48 to Akron's 41-18 and Kentucky 35-51. Now, that match, for some reason, don't understand why, but all three teams only had 3 scorers in air rifle. So that's why the scores seem to be a little bit lower. So Alaska Fairbanks small bore, they had a 23-56 to a 17-92 air. Akron had a 23-38 small bore and a 17-80 air. Kentucky had a 23-57 small bore and 11-94 air. The top shooter for Alaska Fairbanks was Rachel Charles with an 11.90 aggregate. The small bore team for Alaska was Sarah Karasova with a 5.93, Rachel Charles with a 5.91, Marina Gonzalez Mezo with a 587, and Akito Shimizu with a 585. For air rifle, the three shooters were Rachel Charles and Elijah Spencer, both with 599s, and Akito Shimizu with a 594. For Akron, the top shooter was Andrew DeRoss with an 1179 aggregate. Their small bore team, Gavin Prokowski with a 587, Lex Kirk with a 586, Natalia Seek with a 584, and Andrew DeRoss with a 581. And in air, Andrew DeRoss had a 598, Natalia Seek a 594, and Lex Kirk with a 588. Then Kentucky's top shooter was Sophia Cicerello with an 1190 aggregate. Sophia had a 591 small bore. Then we had a pair of 589s from Braden Pizer and Martin Voss. And Emmy Sellers shot her career high with a 588. And then in air, Sophia Cicerello had a 599, followed by Braden Pizer with a 595, and Martin Voss with a 583. So that's going to do it for this week. Like I said, it was a short week with not a whole lot of competition going on. The one final match for the fall season of NCAA air rifle is going to be on December 2nd. That's going to be VMI against John Jay and Wolford. It's going to be at VMI. So once that match is fired, then we won't see any more NCAA action until January 13th. So that'll be it for this week. Check out our show notes for links to the scorecards. You can also go back and any other information discussed on any other podcast. So thank you for listening. And remember, what's important today is your friends, family, and loved ones. So have a happy Thanksgiving, and thank you for listening to Center Tens. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to Season 1 of Center Tens. If you like the show, please leave a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. This helps out tremendously. Give us a follow on Instagram and Facebook at Center Tens. Center Tens can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Buzzsprout, Pocket Cast, and at centertens.com. Hope you join us for our next episode.